We've had a ton of item and rune changes over the past few patches, so 26.12 won't have a single item or rune change and will be heavily focused on champion changes, as we'll have 14 unique champions being adjusted. As always, we'll have the complete breakdown and analysis of every single change and an update to the solo queue tier list for every single role.
Throughout the rift, a great migration occurs every 30 seconds. The minion wave, a vital food source for any climber who knows how to harvest it. But here, we observe one of nature's most baffling behaviors. The hard-stuck player abandoning his food source to chase a kill he will never get. Without proper wave management, he cannot survive, he cannot grow, he cannot climb. In the wild, this tragedy plays out thousands of times every minute. But today, something is different. Today, he discovered a powerful new tool. SkillCapped Season 16 macro and wave control courses, designed to teach even the most lost climber the secrets of the rift, walking you through every minute of the game step by step, from the very first wave all the way to closing out games cleanly. And unlike other guides in the wild, we focus on teaching you the macro concepts that actually work in solo queue, and most importantly, strategies you can execute without having to rely on the rest of your pack, which paired with our newly updated Essentials courses covers everything you need to master Season 16 for every role, giving you the complete roadmap to climb this season. And best of all, you can do it all completely risk-free, as you're backed up by a rank-up guarantee. If you somehow don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service, then you get every penny back. For the first time in his life, he is no longer hard stuck. Check out the link in the description below for an exclusive one-time discount code.
The only system change being issued for 26.12 is to top lane teleport, as the quest reward for taking teleport is being adjusted. Instead of providing you with a 30% max health shield that lasts for 30 seconds, you will now receive a 35% max health shield that lasts for 10 seconds. So for solo queue specifically, this change is likely positive in a lot of cases. The reason Riot's issuing this change in the first place is because in the higher tiers of play, many players have just been using teleport prior to an objective spawning for the sake of receiving the shield. So they would just teleport to a minion or a ward right beside them to gain the shield instead of using it how it's originally intended to be used, as a way to enter a fight from across the map. With this change, it will nerf the strategy of only using TP for the shield, but if you are teleporting across the map and entering a fight how you'd usually want to use teleport, then this change should land as a buff. Overall though, nothing meta breaking here by any means, and it won't influence the solo queue meta in any significant manner. Moving on to the top lane changes now, we've got a few buffs headed Jax's way, as his Q mana cost is being lowered from 65 to 50. E% max health damage is buffed as well, going from 3.5 to 4% minimum damage, and from 7 to 8% max damage. Definitely not buffs that are going to turn Jax into a top tier champ in meta, so we're going to leave him placed in the top lane A tier for now. Gwen has really fallen off over the past while as a top laner, so Riot has a few buffs lined up for her in 26.12. Q base damage per mini snip is going up from 10 scaling to 24 to 10 scaling to 26. E bonus attack speed is buffed early on, going from 20 scaling to 80% to 30 scaling to 80%. So similar to the Jax changes, we just can't see these significantly boosting Gwen's relative power for 26.12, so we're going to be leaving her placed in the top lane B tier. Aatrox is another one of those middling top lane picks who will be buffed for this patch, as his Q sweet spot damage is being increased from 70 to 75%. We can see that if you were to land each sweet spot Q in the early game, then it's a 9 damage increase in total. So a pretty minor change overall, and we don't think it's going to be quite enough to warrant a move into the S tier for Aatrox, so we're going to have to keep him placed in A. So if we have a look at the top lane tier list for 26.12, it's going to continue to be Kayle and Malphite locking down the OP tier. This patch was quite light in regards to meta shifting top lane changes, so just a few noteworthy changes we are making to the list. The first being Sylas moving into the A tier. Sylas is getting a buff to his Q damage at max rank, and then his W healing is buffed as well, so we think those changes will be enough to solidify him as an A tier pick. We are seeing Ryze nerfed for this patch, so he's going to lose some power, but we've already got him down in the B tier, so that's where he'll remain for now. Xin Zhao is being changed so that his passive healing is down and the mana cost on his W and E are up, so those nerfs will definitely hurt top lane Xin Zhao. We don't think the changes will kill him, but we're going to be dropping him back down into the B tier after moving him up into A last patch. So it's about time we see a nerf coming through for Nocturne, as he's been the best solo Q jungler for a while now. Q damage is what's getting nerfed, as it's dropping from 65 scaling to 245 to 65 scaling to 225. So a 20 damage loss at max rank, which is somewhat significant, and we think it will be enough to where Nocturne loses his OP tier spot and falls into S. There are a few nerfs nerfs being issued to Lee Sin as his AD growth is going down from 3.7 to 3.4. Q1 and Q2 damage will be reduced as well, with the base and ratio going down, and as we can see in the comparison clips, this ends up being a total loss of 12 damage when you are on your Eclipse spike. So nothing that will make Lee Sin a terrible pick, but we don't think he's going to be worthy of an S tier slot anymore, so we're demoting him down to A. So the jungle meta is in a really interesting spot for 26.12, because with Nocturne nerfed, we really don't have a clear-cut winner who's significantly stronger than everyone else. If you are Emerald or below right now, then we do think Rammus is just a flat-out most reliable jungler pick, so we've got him in the OP tier, but he's really not that much better than many of the S tier champs. There's just a ton of variety to choose from right now, which is great as we saw Wukong recently buffed. Aatrox is really sleeper right now as a jungler, especially with his buff for this patch. You can now build AP or AD on Udyr and find great success. Diana is back after her buff from last patch, and Warwick is really strong for the lower elos after his recent buff. In regards to the Aatrox buffs, his Q damage is going up, so that's not only going to help out his skirmish, but improve his clear speed as well. And with Aatrox already performing as a fringe S tier pick in recent patches, we're going to move him into S for 26.12. Xin Zhao is going to be moved out of the jungle S tier because of the nerfs he's receiving. The nerfs are more so aimed at reducing the power of mid lane Xin Zhao, but jungle will still be negatively impacted too, so we're demoting him into A. As for the Sylas buffs, we don't think that they will have a very significant impact on his strength as a jungler. Q damage is going up at max rank, so that helps lane Sylas out more, as you can max Q in certain matchups, but for jungle Sylas, you really never want to max Q first, and therefore we're going to keep him placed in the B tier. There are a bunch of mid laners being adjusted for this patch, so let's start things off by covering the Hui changes. Hui will receive a few buffs, as his QQ AP ratio is going up from 70 to 80%. QW AP ratio is being increased from 25 scaling to 87.5% to 30 scaling to 105%. QE slow is going up from 30 to 35%, and then E cooldown will be dropping from 13 scaling to 11 seconds to 12 scaling to 10 seconds. So nothing overly impactful with these Hui changes, and to be honest, he wasn't really in dire need of buffs anyways, as we've had him placed in the mid lane A tier. We don't see the changes being quite what he needs to push into the S tier, so we'll be leaving Hui in A for 26.12. Syndra has been struggling a bit more relative to other mages in recent patches, so she will have her base health increased, going from 563 to 583. Q damage is going up as well, from 80 scaling to 220 to 90 scaling to 230, while Q AP ratio is being increased from 65 to 70%. So a couple of changes that will increase the laning strength of Syndra with more early damage and durability. The buffs won't turn her into a top percentile mage, but she won't be near the bottom anymore either, as we're placing her in the A tier. Mid lane Sylas should be on the come up for 26.12, as Riot will be buffing his Q damage, going from 40 scaling to 120 to 40 scaling to 140, while AP ratio on Q is up from 40 to 45%. W heal AP ratio is being increased as well, going from 20 scaling to 30% to 30 scaling to 60%. The Q buff is quite interesting because in 26.11, Q max on Sylas actually had a better win rate than W max across the lower elos. Now with Q gaining 20 damage at max rank, there's even more incentive to max the spell out first, so we'll have to keep track as to whether maxing Q is now just flat out the best in all cases. In your range matchups, going for Q max is definitely something you should consider now for 26.12. Melee matchups where you can trade more aggressively, there will definitely still be value to the W max, but we should now see more than just 20% of Sylas players maxing their Q out first. For Sylas' tier list placement, we're going to be promoting him up from B into the A tier. So Xin Zhao, mid lane of all champions, was one of the most OP picks throughout last patch, so Riot has a few nerfs prepared for 26.12. Passive max health healing is going down from 3 scaling to 5% to 2 scaling to 5%. Passive heal AP ratio is dropping from 45 scaling to 80% to 40 scaling to 70%. W mana cost is going up from 60 scaling to 40 to 60 flat, and then E mana cost is going up from 50 to 60. So from the testing we did on the PvE, either the changes weren't added properly, or the passive heal nerf actually looks quite significant. As we can see in this 26.11 clip, Xin was healing for 82 health, but in the 26.12 clip, he's only healing for 23. If this is the extent of the nerf, then we definitely expect for Xin Zhao to be losing a ton of power for 26.12, and we'll be dropping him from OP into A. Predicting a completely accurate rating for Xin mid in 26.12 is pretty hard because we haven't seen him buffed or nerfed like this in the past, but losing over 60 healing on just your Shiv spike from each passive proc seems like it should be a big deal. Orianna has been one of the worst performing solo queue mages this season, but she's being nerfed yet again due to pro play. Passive damage increase per stack is going down from 20 to 15%. Base health is dropping from 585 to 565. E resists are going down from 6 scaling to 30 to 5 scaling to 25. E damage AP ratio is being increased from 30 to 40%, while E shield AP ratio is going up from 45 to 50%. R base damage will be lowered from 250 scaling to 550 to 225 scaling to 475, while R AP ratio is up from 95 to 115%. So a lot of base stats are going down while AP ratios are going up, and the reason Riot's issuing these changes is because they want to push Orianna off of Rocket Belt. Rocket Belt only has 70 AP, whereas Shadow Flame has 110. So if you're building Shadow Flame, then you're going to benefit a lot more from these changes. Rocket Belt is mainly purchased in Pro on Orianna, as the majority of solo queue Ori players do opt for Shadow Flame, so these changes aren't actually that bad for solo queue Ori. We do think that she will get slightly weaker for solo queue, but not by much, so we'll be leaving her in the B tier for now. So Ryze is going to see his early game become weaker for this patch, as base health is going down from 645 to 620, and base AD is dropping from 58 to 55. Similar to Orianna, Ryze has already been a pretty weak solo queue champ over the past while, and is only being nerfed because of pro play. So with these nerfs coming through, he's going to become an even less attractive pick, and will remain placed in the mid lane C tier. So now that Xin Zhao is pretty heavily nerfed for 26.12, the OP tier for mid lane is going to be locked down by Fizz and Xerath, a new addition to the mid lane tier list, who we will have a more extensive breakdown on in our solo carry video this week, is Riven mid. TLDR is that Riven gets to abuse this super crazy healing build, as the boots upgrade for Gluttonous Greaves are insane on her, and she also has much easier matchups in mid compared to top, so she's been finding a lot of success recently and gaining in play rate. It's kind of funny how these traditional top lane champs like Sion and Riven just find way more success in the mid lane. Neither champ has a very high play rate in mid, but they both perform infinitely better when played as mid laners as opposed to top. For Riven in specific, it makes a lot of sense because she gets to play against way more squishy, vulnerable champs that she can 100-0 a lot easier at level 6 compared to a bruiser or a tank who's going to be stacking health, where you likely need multiple rotations of spells to kill them. Moving on to ADC now, the one champ who's getting directly buffed for 26.12 is Tristana. Trist Q mana cost is going down from 30 scaling to 50 to 15 scaling to 35, and AD growth is up from 2.9 to 3.4. The AD growth buff is actually somewhat significant and likely adds around 1% win rate to Trist. Tack on the Q buff as well, and we are likely looking at Tristana being one of the stronger ADCs of the patch, so we are moving her up from A into S tier. Varus has become a lot stronger as of recent with his new static Shiv build, so Riot has a few nerfs planned for this patch. Passive AD and AP you receive on non-champion kills is going up from 10% of your total attack speed to 11% of your total attack speed. Passive AD and AP on champion takedowns is up from 25% of attack speed to 33% of attack speed. The attack speed you get on champ takedowns is being lowered though from 50 to 30%. And then Q bonus AD ratio is getting nerfed, dropping from 100 scaling to 150% to 80 scaling to 120%. So overall, with the Q bonus AD ratio nerf going through, it's just going to make running attack speed builds on Varus that much more appealing. Interesting to note over the past patch is that W max Varus has been performing better than Q max. W max has been most common for top lane Varus, but hasn't really made its way over to bot Varus as much, with only 20% of Varus players choosing to max W first. W max is winning 3% more than Q max though, and with Q nerfed, that gap should widen even more. So if you haven't tried W max on Varus when playing the static Shiv into Rage Blade build, then definitely give it a go. For Varus' tier list placement, we do expect him to lose a decent chunk of power due to these nerfs, so he's going to be dropping from A into B tier. So looking at the ADC tier list for 26.12, we have two outliers who are outclassing everyone else, and placed up in the OP tier being Senna and Brand. So it turns out the nerfs to the Black Cleaver and Deathfire Touch synergy did not hurt Senna at all last patch, and she's absolutely dominating with her Shiv into Cleaver build. Brand is another phenomenal Deathfire Touch user and has been arguably the most OP champ in the game when played in the bot lane after the rune got added to the game. ADCs who can abuse the new boots Gluttonous Greaves the best have been finding more relative success over the past patch. Zeri is a really good Gluttonous Greaves user because she already gets a ton of attack speed from going Fiend Hunter bolts, and therefore the sustain from Gluttonous Greaves is going to be providing more value than slightly more attack speed from Berserker's Greaves in mid to late game skirmishes. Samira, Smolder, Neela, and Varus are a few other really good Gluttonous Greaves users, but the boots are honestly really underrated on the majority of ADCs who don't rely on attack speed as much. So Lucian, Draven, and Aphelios are a few of the more underrated Gluttonous Greaves users. Yuumi is going to receive a few negligible sympathy buffs for this patch, with her passive heal AP ratio being increased from 25 to 30%, and E shield AP ratio is going up from 30 to 40%. The reason we say these are negligible buffs is because they are AP ratio changes, and you're just not able to stack a ton of AP on a support due to the lower gold income, so the changes never end up being that impactful. As a result, we are going to be leaving Yuumi placed down in the support C tier as a champ you really shouldn't be playing if you want to climb the fastest. So with Yuumi being the only support who's adjusted for this patch, the tier list is going to be looking largely the same as last patch, with a few minor tweaks here and there. OP tier will be locked down by Leona, Senna, and Seraphine, as we are bumping Seraphine back into the OP tier because the enchanter item and rune nerfs really didn't hit her that bad at all last patch, and she even has a new build revolving building around Imperial Mandate that she can run, which we'll go more into detail about in our other meta videos this week. As for Senna, like we mentioned when covering ADC, the Deathfire and Black Cleaver synergy being removed has not negatively impacted her nearly as much as we had anticipated, so she continues to track as one of the best carry supports for solo queue. The only difference between Senna ADC and support right now is that you rush Shiv on Senna ADC and go Black Cleaver second, but on Senna support, you want to rush Black Cleaver and go into Shiv second. Oh, and it looks like Riot has now removed the ability for you to purchase starting items on supports after completing your quest, so the strategy that we mentioned in our 26.11 updated tier list where you go Doran's Helm will no longer be valid for 26.12, so just keep that in mind. And then if you are a Nami main, for the sake of everyone's elo, drop Mandate as a core purchase on her. The item is no longer a viable rush, and you should instead be prioritizing Echoes of Helia. 50% of Nami players were still rushing Mandate in 26.11, so hopefully that number comes down quite a bit for 26.12. What's even more crazy is that it's not even a low elo thing either. 40% of Master Tier Nami players are still building Imperial Mandate, so I guess they didn't watch any of our videos or read the patch notes. But while lists like these show you what to play, our brand new Season 16 Essentials courses for every role teach you how to win, each designed to walk you through every stage of the game from start to finish. From the exact trading and recall timers you need to win lane, to the mid-game macro decisions 99% of players get completely wrong, all the way to the team fighting tips and tricks challengers abuse to always deal the highest damage possible. Whether you're a top laner in the most unfavorable matchup possible, a mid laner having to deal with everybody in your lane 24/7, a jungler trying to balance ganking with farming, an ADC stuck trying to hard carry with a support who just exists to grief you, or a support that's struggling to carry games on your own. Our Essentials courses are tailor-made to focus on the exact concepts that actually matter for climbing on your role in your elo. Check them out today, completely risk-free, using the link in the pinned comment or description below, as if you don't climb at least 5 divisions, you get every penny back. So that's gonna round out everything for the 26.12 edition of the solo queue tier list. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.